Hi, I'm Marcus Ruby, and you're listening to Talking to Teachers, a podcast that focuses on the unique perspectives and challenges from people all across the education industry. Aristotle's arguably most famous concept is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But what if those parts do not see the value in each other? What if they have no idea what it's like to function elsewhere, and therefore harbor frustration and resentment that is totally misguided? That is why each week, I sit down with a representative from the education community to appreciate their experience, vision, and concerns, in the hope that together, we can become better.
So you will be highly successful as an administrator or as a teacher when you see the best in everyone. And that has been a gift that I have been given. I know I see the best in every person and everyone. Sometimes it's hard. Gosh, sometimes it is hard. But everyone has good. I truly believe everyone has good in them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in education.
My guest today is Roxie. She has been in education for over 15 years, 10 of those as an administrator. Roxie was my administrator when I first transferred to the middle school level, and for anyone who teaches middle school, you know things can be tense, to put it mildly. Yet, in all the fray, she remained a steadfast source of leadership and control, and maintained respect and rapport with all the teachers. One lesson I have learned in this conversation is the power of a leader to have multi-perspectives or holistic viewpoints about those they manage. You will not be everyone's friend, but that doesn't mean you have to be their enemy. Additionally, it doesn't mean that you cannot see the value of people you do not mesh well with and appreciate their contribution to student success. I guess first, how long did you teach?
I was actually only a teacher for 5 years.
Really?
Yes. I was an inclusion teacher for 2 years, which those first 2 years I consider was God's grace. And it taught me, I got to see so many best practices, but I also got to see what didn't work in the classroom. So I was an inclusion teacher for 2 years before the principal at the time called me in and said, I really need you to teach 6th grade math. So I taught 6th grade math for 3 years, and on my 5th year of teaching, I was recognized as the district teacher of the year.
Oh, wow.
And then right after that, I received my master's degree, and I went straight into the same principal who made me become a math teacher, brought me to this campus as an assistant principal.
Was it a different campus from where you were teaching?
Yes, I started teaching at one of our middle schools in the district, but not this one.
Did you find it difficult your first year teaching, or was it like harder your first year teaching general ed as far as?
No, teaching general was good because again, I had 2 years of being able to witness best practices and not the best practices.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. So my first year teaching was really difficult. So I was teaching for 2 years inclusion, 3 years as a math teacher. But what was really funny was my last year, my 5th year of teaching, I went into the school to speak to the principal. And all I went in there was to ask if I could have a classroom with a window. I don't know why, but that's just so important when you're teaching all day, just to have a little bit of sunshine, right? So I went in there and he told me, he's like, sure, you can have a classroom with the window, but I need you to know you're teaching 3 sections of ESL and 3 sections of math.
Wow.
I didn't even realize I was ESL certified, but when I started pursuing it, a career in teaching, I took a lot of different tests, and that was one of them. And it was the best thing that could have happened. It was by far the best thing because I got to work with, I still remember the students. I had a student from the Philippines, several from Mexico, some from Honduras. It was just the neatest thing.
Wow. That's kind of like where I taught when I first started. You get so many kids. I think we had kids from Thailand, Nigeria. And I think it really does add like a whole experience, a whole different level to the classroom.
Totally. And I remember on Fridays, I would do kind of like we would do, not every Friday, but if we earn, they got their points or whatever reward system I had in place there, we would do kind of a potluck. And everybody got to bring a dish from their homeland, right? And it would be so funny because I had my ESL classes in the morning, first, second, and third, and the afternoon classes hated it because the students would bring like food from like Vietnam, or like from the Philippines, and like, Miss, your room stinks. But I loved it, because it was
awesome.
I got to see the students and they got to bring a little bit of what their home to us, so it was just the neatest thing.
When I was teaching, I had a girl from Thailand who spoke English very well, one of the top smartest kids, and she also would do all the interpretation for whenever we were talking to parents who spoke, I think it was Tagalog was the language they were speaking.
Wow.
And then one time we were on the playground because it was elementary, and she cussed out a boy in Spanish. And I was like, first of all, that's amazing. And I was like, don't do that again. But I thought, oh man, she really has an knack for picking up languages.
Wow.
So when you transferred to being an administrator, what was the biggest difference? Because I always feel like, for me personally, I think in the classroom there's easy frustrations. Like you're like, oh my God, this does not work for me. This is going to be stressful for me. But then I'm like, I'm sure the moment you step into like a whole different level, you see like a bigger picture, or you see
yes, totally
what happens.
So now I'm into my 9th year of being an administrator. I was an AP for 5 years. So I taught for 5, AP for 5, and now I'm going into my 4th year as a principal. I miss being in the classroom so much because the way I see it is when you're in your classroom, you control your 4 walls. Students are engaged. You control the way you speak to students. You control the way students speak to each other. You control the amount of participation your students have. You control the amount of prep you put into your lessons. You control all of that. You're only responsible for you and the success of your students. When I transitioned into administration, it was so difficult because I was no longer in control of just my actions. If a teacher said something inappropriate to the student, I answered to them because parents were upset. So I realized then that I could not control what my walls got bigger. So instead of controlling my 4 walls to my classroom, those 4 walls now became the campus. And now as a principal, that responsibility is just so intense and you carry it, but you have to be very passionate about what you do and love what you do, because we do make mistakes. And I tell the parents that all the time when they come up here, well, your teacher did this, or this student did this to my child. And I get that. I can't control what comes out of my, the 60 teachers I have here on campus. I can't control what comes out of their mouth. But what I can control is the way I'm going to respond to it. When a parent comes up here and is concerned. And I always acknowledge it. We own it. We own it and we grow from it. And we had a lot of fights last year, and they were silly, ridiculous 10-second fights. But on day 1 of school, this current year that we're still in, on day 1 of school, I brought all the kids into the gym. We had an assembly on the first day of school. And I had 2 students from the student body, our most popular 8th graders, get up and read I Choose pledge. And on that pledge, I had the 8th graders read, if I choose to fight, I go to alternative. If I choose to bring weapons or drugs, I go to alternative. If I choose not to do my work, then I choose to get a bad grade. But I set the tone from the get-go. And I told the students, when you come to school, I am responsible for your safety. That's first and foremost. And until you're comfortable and you feel safe, then the learning can happen. So I know I kind of went off, but
that's really interesting.
From teacher to admin, there's so much that you can't control. I can't even control when I'm going to eat lunch. I can't control when I'm going to be able to leave work, or, it's a very different component, but I love what I do. So yes, it's difficult, and yes, it's a lot of stress, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Now, I love what I do, not because of the position or the title. That has nothing to do with it. I am a principal that's out there with a tutu and Converse, I am out there dancing in the drop-off line. I love it because of my students and my community. And that's huge.
Wow. One common question that always comes to mind when speaking with educators that have been in education for many years and still have a passion for education is, how do you keep from burning out? I've always thought, first and foremost, and this is something I talked with another teacher about, just the ability to stay positive. Because I felt like even when we taught together our first year, and it could have gotten a little crazy at times, you always had like a positive way.
Outlook.
Yes. And that's something that I think I've even struggled with.
Yeah.
And especially I know that a lot of it comes from the people you put yourself with and put yourself
Definitely.
next to. But I've always, in the last year, come to really appreciate people who day in, day out, they have a positive demeanor and a way of looking
For
at things.
sure. So I have a few and I wasn't always this positive. I think I've grown to be this person. But I've always, I'm lying, because even as a little girl, I always saw like, okay, well, that's best case scenario. But now, as an adult, I have a saying, and I just stick to it. Is this going to affect my life or the student's life 5 years from now? And if it doesn't, then I'm not going to spend no more than 5 minutes on it. So when a teacher comes so frustrated up here, well, they forgot their gym uniform. Okay. And they're ripping into the kid. I would tell the teachers, I'm like, pause, just think. Will this affect the fact that the student does not have their uniform? Will that affect his life or your life 5 years from now? No, it won't even affect it 5 days from now. Why are you giving it more than 5 minutes of your time? Move on. So that's one thing that always sticks in my head. I gave all of my staff a copy of the Energy Bus.
Oh, I've never.
And I'm actually going to give this to you. Okay.
Oh, awesome.
You're going to love it, Ruby.
Thank you so much.
It's, I read it during my master's program, and it just talks about like you're the driver of your own bus. How you want your day to go, you pick your own weather. And that's kind of the mindset I've always had, and I'm huge on that. I pick my own weather. My job is tough.
The book that Roxie handed me is called The Energy Bus by Jon Gordon. When I opened to the introduction, I just want to read the first paragraph because I think it fits so well with her energy and her discussion about being positive and the power of being positive on campus. It says, positive energy. It's a term being talked about a lot more frequently in conference rooms, classrooms, locker rooms, and even in living rooms. Perhaps it's because there's an abundance of new research that shows that positive people, positive communication, positive interaction, and positive work and team cultures produce positive results. Or perhaps, at a deeper level, we all know that every person, every career, every company, every organization, every family, and every team will have to overcome negativity and adversity and challenges to define themselves and create success. Inside there was a letter that she wrote to every teacher when she handed them this book for Teacher Appreciation Week. The letter reads, "To my precious team, the journey of a life is a beautiful thing. A big part of our daily life is what we do and who we do it with. Several months ago, I began to think of a gift that I could give you that would demonstrate how much I appreciate you. What I realized was that there was no gift large enough or expensive enough that would truly demonstrate the love and appreciation I have for you. After some consideration, I wanted to give you a book that changed my outlook in a positive way. My wish for each and every one of you is that you live a full life of happiness, compassion, and love, because that will translate to the lives we impact on a daily basis. I encourage you to read this book over the summer, as I will reference it regularly throughout our conversations. I love you very much, and I'm happy you are on my bus. Happy Teachers Appreciation Week. With love and admiration, your Principal, Roxie."
Without giving too much information, I am an F campus, and I was moved here. The year was identified as an F. I really thought, because I've been such an overachiever all my life, we were going to knock it out of the park and we were going to go from an F to an A all in 1 year. It was like in my head, I had this dream, right? Yes. This is what was going to happen. It didn't happen. In fact, we dug our hole a little deeper. And this year, we can't even take the star. So that was a huge, I couldn't even go down swinging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now I'm going into year 3 as an F, but identified as a second year. But I had to really come to terms with it and think to myself, okay, maybe it's the time I needed to polish what I've been working on. So it really, truly, it's your mindset. It's your mindset and everything. That's what keeps me positive, because being negative is not going to do anything.
Especially, I would be curious when because we worked together, you were my administrator, and I think we've even talked about, like you were saying earlier, the power of loyalty and supporting an administrator. And I thought that's such an interesting conversation, because I think it is so easy to kind of get in a headspace where you're like, oh, there we go again.
Yep.
This is happening again. This is happening again. As opposed to being supportive, even when frustrated.
Yeah. I think it's important. Doesn't matter what your role is. And I stay true to this day. The way I speak to you is the way I speak to my custodians, is the way I speak to my students, to our superintendent. I speak to everyone the same. And that's just because you talk to people with respect, right? But when we go back to the loyalty and treating others right, you have a family and you have things that are going on outside that I have no idea about. Same thing with me. When I leave here, I go home to something you have no idea about. Mm-hmm. So I always treat my staff like I don't know their story. Just like we don't know our students' story. It could be the best story out there, but it could be the worst. So you treat everyone with such grace that you would want to be treated with, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I believe strongly, and especially with time, you don't take your teacher's time because time is the best gift, you know? Mm-hmm. So I don't ask my staff to do silly things. And for teachers' appreciation, I gave them a book so they could read over the summer. And then there's a note in there and you could read the note. Wow. But time is precious, and especially when you have family, you know? So you have to balance it. How much am I going to require of my teachers? But at the same time, I don't want to take their personal time, you know? So, and that's how I feel you win teachers' loyalty. You're going to have a staff that wants to work for you because you know that they know that I respect them as individuals, but my expectation is we have a job to do because these students deserve the best.
Yes. I think I would be curious. So when I've been interviewing just at different companies, because I've always wanted to go into education technology, and the three kind of questions I always ask them, and I'd be curious to hear your answer, especially as a teacher. I think it's so hard to get into the mindset of a principal and know, even for teachers who have the best intentions and they struggle with how do I meet what they want, or what do they look for and character. So I'd be curious to know, like, the three things I usually ask is, what is some characteristics of individuals that you've worked with that you found that didn't work for you or you didn't enjoy in them? So maybe teachers, some things that they displayed that you didn't like. And then on the adverse side, what are some things that they did do that you really liked? Yeah. And then what do you hope a teacher exhibits? What do you want teachers on your campus to have?
So I'll start with the first one. What I didn't like is I struggle to work with teachers who have a fixed mindset. You know, that are not willing to bend, you know, and because they've done it for X number of years, and to them that's best practice. But the thing is, and what I try to explain to them is, you only know what you only know. As a teacher, you are in control of your four walls. That is your palace, that is your domain, that is your home, right? You treat your home just the way you do your own personal home. That is your home, you control that. But as an administrator, you walk into so many classrooms. So sometimes teachers, I feel that they are fearful of change, but they don't know what the other side looks like. So I struggle with teachers who have a fixed mindset or a negative attitude. I prefer not to work with them, to be honest with you, just because their energy is, I don't want it to rub off on me, or I'm going to match their energy. And I know I'm not going to be my personal best if I'm matching negative energy, if that makes sense. Yes. What I do love in a teacher, the opposite of that, is one with a growth mindset. Hey, in it to win it. We can do it. We're a team, right? And then someone with that positive attitude. Content, that you can learn content. You can learn best practices, but you can't learn heart, you know? So I like to work with teachers who are here for the right reasons. And what I really love about teachers is compassion. Teachers who are compassionate. Because I promise you, these students will not remember what we taught them this year, but they will remember how we made them feel, if that makes sense. Yes. You know, teaching them's the cherry on top. You know, if we can get them to perform well, that is the cherry on top. But more so than that is I want these students to walk out of here knowing that they were loved and were appreciated. And I want them to remember this is a good place.
Yes. I think that that's powerful. In these conversations that I've had in the last few weeks, it always has come back down to the numbers. That's what everyone kind of defines their job as, is the passing fail rate. And, I think that that's something I'd be curious, because it is something where when you're teaching and then you can kind of go through that, but then they take the benchmark or the common assessment and they bomb it. And it just feels like a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been what's reiterated is they're afraid to go that route. And then what's going to happen when the kids fail everything.
Yeah.
And how that works.
So if anyone knows that, it's me, because that's my reality, is our accountability standing with TEA. But I do know that if a teacher truly cares about the success of their students, if their benchmark data is showing that it's not, what they're doing is not being successful, if you have a growth mindset, guess what? That teacher's going to improve. And we're going to get the students to where they need to be. It's the teachers with the fixed mindset or don't want to move from what they're doing is the ones that I struggle with. Or who tend to see everything as a negative thing, when that's not always the case.
Yes.
But as humans, and I tell my teachers this, I'm like, as humans, our minds tend to go south quickly because that's just the way, what you watch in the news. You don't see the news showing all the highlights for the day.
No.
You see all the bad stuff. It's gossip magazines, it's celebrity, it's reality TV. It's all about your mind going south. But that's not, I don't truly think that that's what we try to do.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. I think that that's something I could say I've faulted with, where I can immediately see or hear a new plan and then say, this is not going to work, that's not going to work, this is not going to work, instead of kind of saying the adverse side.
Yeah.
But how, I guess I've had in the past experiences, and I've heard a lot of past experiences, how do you want a conversation like that where your teachers can come to you, like an open door policy, or, I think that sometimes I've even said things to administrators before, but they almost seemed like they felt like they were being attacked, or like, this is it, this is the plan, and go with it.
Yeah.
And I've always struggled with, how do you have like a real conversation or a good suggestion without making them be on guard?
Totally. I think first of all, it depends on the relationship you have with them. So I can only tell you what I do. Okay. When I'm going to introduce something new that I know a certain department is going to have issues with, because that's just their personality, right? Mm-hmm. I tend to bring them in one-on-one. So I'm going to roll out a new lesson plan template. I know 2 out of 7 are going to give me a hard time. And they're going to give me a hard time because A, they're set in their ways and they don't like change. But they're not bad people, right? They're not bad people. They're just very set. So I typically bring them in beforehand. I'm like, hey, I want to run something by you. And I show it to them and I'm like, what are your thoughts? They're like, oh. And then typically when you have that conversation one-on-one, it doesn't go south as quickly.
Yes.
So that way when I do bring it to the table, I already had the conversation. We've already had our disagreement, if there is going to be one. And I've already heard the feedback. But I think anybody, it doesn't matter what role you play on the campus, everyone needs to feel heard and valued, right? So just bringing them in to get that feedback is crucial. And if you do it beforehand, before you roll out something that may potentially be bad, you'll be okay. It's just, it always goes back to your approach. How do you approach people?
Yes.
It's definitely the approach in everything.
And for me, I think when I'm even hearing what you're saying, I'm like, that is so true. Because I think a lot of times these things get brought up at faculty meetings. And I've always wondered, is that the thing that annoys administrators more than anything?
It does.
In the middle of a faculty meeting, and then it's like becomes a planned strategic meeting and stuff like that.
So I don't entertain it. I don't entertain it. And let me tell you why. Just like students, courage comes in numbers, right? Courage comes in numbers. So when one teacher's upset, they get someone on them, and now you have 2 upset teachers, and then the 2 goes to 3. I stop it before it gets to be, I know my personalities of my teachers. I could already tell you who's going to log on first in my Zoom meetings.
Yes.
That's how well I know my teachers. But I don't allow that energy to feed off or to spill over into others. I try to bring them in and I never yell at anybody. I'm never disrespectful. I never talk down to anybody. And I wouldn't allow someone to speak to me that way either. You get what I'm saying? It's just it's A, professional courtesy, And B, it's respect. We're all adults here. And at the end of the day, you and I have the same goal. That's student success.
Yes.
At the end of the day, how we're going to get there, there's going to be questions, but we're in this together. I'm not against you. I'm for you. So it's just being very honest and raw and real. And I think as administrators, I know a few that I have, it's hard for them to admit they're wrong. Or it's hard for them to apologize. I'm not that person. I will tell you, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. And when I'm wrong, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to apologize and let you know that I'm going to try my best never to do it again.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's very interesting to think about, especially with shutting it down at faculty meetings. I think that's something that's just a common everywhere you go in any type of meeting. That is something, for me, I would be curious to know, have you ever seen an experience? I feel like my experience was I started teaching, and then the group that I kind of connected with the most, just because we worked together and stuff, tended to be the negative people on campus that kind of had a lot of opinions. Have you ever saw that? Have you ever tried to pull a teacher in an opposite direction?
Yeah. But you see, again, I have such a great relationship with all of my teachers that I can be very honest with you. I had a teacher in here in my office the other day, and then there was someone from central office, and he didn't agree with something one of my APs said. And he's all like, well, what? I'm going to tell him, but he's a younger guy. He doesn't know how to professionally speak yet. He's learning that. And I told my teacher, I'm like, Mr. So-and-so, there's nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with telling people what you're thinking. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, the manner in which you state it is the concern. I'm like, you don't disagree just to disagree. Understand, understand the reasoning of that assistant principal. And I'm okay with anyone speaking up, but no one has to be ugly about anything. And he understood that, and I haven't seen it since then.
I started this podcast by sharing Roxie's secret to leadership. Here she explains the value of seeing people for more than just your connection with them. It's about having the emotional intelligence to be okay with not being everyone's best friend and not feeling threatened by having varying levels of professional intimacy or closeness with people. Often, I believe leaders fail because they do not know how to lead people who do not cater to them or constantly remain close.
With like what you're saying, a group of, the energy vampires, and you'll read about that in the book I gave you.
Good.
So you're going to read about the energy vampires, and you have to know, you have to want it yourself, right? So if I have a group of energy vampires together, never mind, you don't want to be around them, but separated, they're so good, So typically, you have to be very strategic about it. So when I'm having a faculty meeting, I pick the assignments. I pick their seating. Okay, all of this department and this grade level, we mix them up to avoid.
Oh, okay.
You get what I'm saying?
Wow, that's interesting.
We mix them up to avoid it. Or when we have our district PD days, we don't do everyone in the cafeteria all day long. No, we break up into rotations and we pick your group. But not only do we pick the groups to keep the energy vampires away from each other, but we also pick the groups so they get to experience and hear best practices of other teachers. It's really, truly a growth opportunity. But I have zero problems pulling someone and saying, hey, I'm not feeling your energy. Tell me what's up. How can I help you? What can I do? Are you struggling with a student? Boom, let me handle that student. You struggling with a parent? Let me call that parent for you. Are you struggling with another teacher? Let me bring you in and let's mediate together. But I have zero problems bringing a teacher in and saying, I'm not feeling you. What's going on? Talk to me.
But does that work? Do you find that actually opens them up? Really?
Of course.
Wow.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to feel heard and valued. So.
Wow. That's so interesting because I think when I was talking to a lot of teachers, and I did feel like some of them did have conversations, but they didn't walk away. It's like they chose to still seethe at the end of it. And I thought, man, how do you counteract that? But one thing that I like from what I'm hearing from you is the way you're saying, people can be duplistic. They can be, an energy vampire, but at the same time, they're also really effective. And I think that's something that I think you kind of feel like, oh man, I have been painted as this, and this is now who I am, as opposed to seeing multiple sides of people.
So you will be highly successful as an administrator or as a teacher when you see the best in everyone. And that has been a gift that I have been given. I know I see the best in every person and in everyone. Sometimes it's hard. Oh gosh, sometimes it is hard. But everyone has good. I truly believe everyone has good in them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in education.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there has to be, and you get that strength and you work with it. And it takes you a while to love. You know, like it takes you a while to grow to love the teachers. But let me give you an example. When I became a principal at the elementary campus for 1 year, my first year, my one and only year I was ever in elementary, I became principal there. And there was this a behavior teacher, life skills teacher. She was a life skills teacher. Oh my gosh. I did not like her approach. I truly did not. I didn't feel her vibe at all. We didn't butt heads, but it was hard for me to be honest with her. And I know that I wasn't there yet because I couldn't have honest conversations with her. Anywho, about a few months into it, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't come to work every day and not feel comfortable with her.
Yes.
So I called her in, but this is my campus, you know? And I called her in and I said, I can't do this. Like, I don't like this, and that. What am I doing wrong as your principal? Or help me see it from your side. So anywho, fast forward 2 years down the road, she's difficult, but gosh, she's an advocate for our students. So I knew that she's difficult with adults and she's so bossy. And her approach is so aggressive, but she is good for kids. And that's what we're in business of right now. What's good for adults, but what's good for children. So anywho, I had an opening and guess what? She's now my behavior teacher here.
Really? Wow.
And I always tell her when she's about to approach another adult, a parent, I always tell her, now we have a saying. I'm like, you know, Miss So-and-so, I need you to put some sugar on it. And she already knows. She's like, I put sugar. I put a gallon of sugar. And I'm like, nope, not enough. Let's try it again.
Man.
But now that's become our theme.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And I think that speaks back to what we were saying prior to even starting this podcast, was just kind of how you were talking about a leader is so much more than just your content.
Oh,
it's so
gosh,
much more
yes.
It's the way you approach people. And I think what I would be curious to know is, let's say, because you're saying that, what do you as a principal wish teachers would do when they're having a difficult parent situation or a difficult student situation? I know, like, from my end, especially right now, we've been on the COVID shutdown, so I'm in a peace and in a break, but I know what it's like to be in a classroom with a kid or a parent and you're like losing your mind. And I've never, like, what are the things that you wish processes or steps that teachers would take initially on their own?
Yeah. So I've been in a few parent conferences where the teachers are just kind of going in on the parents and I have to shut it. Like, okay, stop. We get it. You know, like really what it boils down to is just listening to the parents, you know, and just listening. And then at the very end, I think that's why I am known in the district for having great community relations. My parents love me.
Definitely.
That's what I'm known for, you know. I'm known for my community outreach. But my parents come in here in their pajamas or, you know, covered in tattoos and they feel that I'm going to treat them differently, but I don't. So they're blown away when they walk into my office and they walk out of here and I always tell them, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Now let's meet in the middle. We need to work together, you know, and it's a beautiful thing because you respected them and you valued them and you heard them.
Yes.
You know? So I wish teachers would go into parent conferences, not like they have a point to prove, but rather you are the expert when it comes to your child. Help me make your child successful.
Man.
That's the way I wish all of our teachers would come into.
And I think it's a struggle because you're like upset and you feel disrespected, and to try to humble yourself to that level.
You have to. You absolutely
really
have to.
And I mean, that's what I think. I do realize when I taught with you those years that I felt like that was your strength, was your ability to walk in and be able to do that. And I think that sometimes I'll go into a meeting where I am frustrated and maybe I feel disrespected or they told me off. And so then it becomes a stance of like, I'm not putting up with this. I mean business. And to be able to lay that down is so difficult.
Yeah.
How
and then
do
it
you do
becomes
that?
like a pointing
Yes.
you know,
back and forth.
So you have to balance. So when I have parent conferences where I know teachers are done, they're done with this student. He's been so disrespectful. He hasn't been doing work, and I get it. And then you bring the parents in, and then, you know, you have 5 teachers jumping on this parent about how horrible their child is, right? I stop it. I'm like, you know, I stop it, and you have to respect your teachers because they're the ones, I'm not doing the hard work. The teachers are. Y'all are in the trenches. Y'all are the one. My success is dependent on the teacher's success. I don't shine unless the teachers shine. The teachers don't shine unless the students shine. And I'm a firm believer in that. It's a domino effect, right? So you have to support the teachers. So I always listen to what the teachers have to say. If it gets too negative, I cut it. Okay, we're going to table it. We'll come back, you know. But I always sit next to the parents because I don't want the parents to feel, I never do a desk sitting. Okay. So like if a parent comes in here, I sit where you're at, the student sits there, and I bring the tables kind of like the chairs in a circle.
Okay.
Kind of like don't sit opposite, sit with them. So I do. And then at the very end, I kind of bring it all together. I'm like, okay, so what I'm hearing from the teachers, and I say it in front of the teachers, is there's a little bit of frustration on the fact that Johnny doesn't want to do X, Y, and Z. Understood. Mom, can you support us in the fact that A, speak to him, and B, if it doesn't get better, can you support us in making him stay for after school detention to make up this work? And typically, parents, when you approach them like that, yes, I will support you with that. But once it becomes to, no, it's your fault, you've lost everything. And guess what? Now we've lost that student. And if it's a 6th grader, forget it, because you have them for another 2 years.
Yes.
You know, so you just have to invest in your parents and invest in your students.
Wow, that's
but
a great concept.
Also support your teachers.
I think for me, one thing that I'm learning right now is just the idea of shutting down negativity.
Oh, yes. Don't entertain it.
Which is something that I think the mistakes I made early on is kind of indulging in conversations.
Yes.
And I think at the end of the day, it feels like commiseration. That's what we always joke with because you're so stressed out.
Yes, you are. But there's a proper place to vent. You got to know I know who my foot soldiers are, right? I know who I can vent to, and I know who's going to execute my plan. I know that my AP that you know,
yes,
he is a stopping zone. So I know if I go and vent to him, it's not going to go anywhere from that. So I already know who I can go to vent about a frustration with X, Y, or Z. But I was going to say something about stopping when I got my MCLs this year, I got 3 MCLs, and I knew they were my foot soldiers.
I wanted to provide a quick definition for the term MCL. I know that you've heard it in a couple podcasts now. MCL stands for Multi-Classroom Leader, and it is what our district calls content leads. In addition to content, they have some periods off to provide coaching to struggling teachers, and therefore, they are also referred to as teacher leaders.
My first order of business was I brought the 3 of them in here together, and I said to them, my expectation for you are out in the trenches. You are the teacher leaders. They love you. They go to you. They ask you for advice. If there is 1 ounce of negativity, I need you to shut it down. You say, I'm not going to talk about it. You walk out. But the minute I hear you entertained it, I don't want you to be my MCL.
Wow.
So they knew that was the expectation. Year 1 was tough for me here because I didn't know all the personalities. But last year, my expectation was we're not going to entertain this. We're in it to win it. And if you're not on my ship, I need you off. Let's move.
Yeah.
So,
man, that's a great concept. I think that is something where the leaders can kind of fail because that's what's so hard is especially when you're talking about teacher leaders, they are already friends with these people, already have relationships. I could not imagine taking over a leadership position where your friends are because of these types of conversations and the things you've said in the past.
Yeah.
You know, that's definitely been a part of that. What would you ask, and I'm just curious, we'll do just a few more minutes, but what would you, if you had a chance, like if every teacher, throughout the United States, hopefully the world will listen to this, what are some things as a principal you wish you could say to them, like guidance about things to change or perspectives, even from your own? I guess to me, the way I see it is, you almost wish you could tell students, like, listen, if you would just keep it like this and that, then you would be so much more successful. And then I know with teachers, I imagine from you guys' view, there are things that are the most important, that matter the most. the idea of, from my perspective, it's always looked like scores. I could care less about your student report, about your management. At the end of the day, it's whatever you do to get those scores. And I've even worked in schools where that's been the total priority. And
I think I know it, and it's what I tell my teachers now. The advice I would tell, or what I would want teachers to know, is you do not realize the impact you have on the students. And I'm not talking about the academic achievement impact. That's a component. But the impact that you have on that child with their dreams, their beliefs, their outlook on life. And if you impact that child, those children become adults, and they become parents, and they join the workforce. If you can impact those students in your classroom. And I'm tired of hearing, if I could just change one life. No, I'm not okay with that. We need you. If we're in this to win it, if education is going to be the way for all of our students, know that you can make such an impact. Use your time wisely. And yes, scores are important because that's how we get funded. And I understand that. But care for those kiddos, be compassionate, and be in education for all the right reasons. Because the fruits of our labor, especially as teachers, we don't see them right away.
No.
We don't. But you wait 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, and I guarantee you, if you're in it for the right reasons, if you teach with passion, if you teach with heart, the impact you will have is so great that you do leave behind a legacy.
Wow. How do you avoid burnout? Is that your answer to that? I listened to a podcast the other day where a teacher said, I had to leave. She had been teaching 10 years. I had to leave. I was done. I knew I was done when I didn't care about the kids anymore. And I thought, how do you avoid reaching that place? I
have fun. I play tag in the hallways with other teachers.
Wow.
I play tag in the courtyard with the 6th graders. I'm in my high heels running behind them. I wear a tutu on Halloween or just because. I wear Converse because the kids love them and they're full of sparkle. I dance in the parent pickup line. I have craft nights on campus. I have fun with it. I go to the football games and the basketball games and I cheer and I cheer and I cheer for them. I just have fun with it. That's how I avoid burnout.
That's one thing that I think coming to the middle school I didn't ever do because I came from elementary was go to games and concerts.
Oh gosh, you have to. You have to.
And I always think about the teachers who did and how much the kids loved that.
So one of the teachers that I struggle with, just because he's so different, is my band teacher, and he's very he's set in his thinking. But last year, our kids were invited to play at the Tobin Center. It was invitational only.
Wow.
And I remember seeing my band director on stage with my 60 students in band, and they were all in their tuxedos and their dresses. And knowing at that moment, he's here for the right reasons and his passion radiates. How many middle school kids have gotten the opportunity to play in the Tobin Center, in front of an audience? And that's what it boils down to. Like, we might not always agree with each other, but at the end of the day, if we're here for the right reasons, then we're good.
Yes, that is a really great point. And I think it's a great point for people to realize, even if you don't have the best of relationships with someone, you can still see the value.
And you respect them. You respect them for what they do bring.
And I think that's really what most teachers probably struggle with when it comes to on campus, because you do have people you get along with really well and people you don't, but being able to retain that line of respect as opposed to that.
I think it's easy for you to think about that, but it's harder for me to process that because in my role, I feel alone, right? Really? I think that, it's true. The higher you go up in administration, the more alone you feel. So I don't really care when other people don't, I don't get invited anywhere and I'm okay with that, you know? But I know for teachers, it's difficult because you're in the trenches with them. And so when I told my MCLs, do not entertain it, I never said, shut it, it's like, just get up and walk away. Or say, hey, can we change the subject? But I didn't want to put them in a situation where they were uncomfortable either, because at the end of the day, they still are with them every day.
Yeah.
So that's what they would do. During lunches, if someone would start saying something bad, they would change the subject for me. or they would get up and walk out. Oh, I have to go run some copies, but I didn't expect them to address the teacher. That's not their job. That's my job. Mm-hmm. Let me know. And I'll bring them in and say, hey, I'm not feeling this. Yeah. Where are we? But I can have those conversations, and I get paid to have those conversations. So those difficult, uneasy conversations, I'm okay having them, but I'm always honest. And that's huge. Always be honest. If their attitude sucks, let them know your attitude sucks. If they're not putting in the work into the lesson planning, they're flying by, tell them that. Tell them that. People appreciate it when you're honest with them.
Have you ever had someone, especially when you try to be like elevate the conversation, not stay so negative, or be like strategic in the way you speak as a leader? Have you ever had either like former contemporary people that were next to you kind of, I guess, not criticize, but joke with you, like, you need to calm down, you're getting above, you're getting too full of yourself? Or I think that was something that we experienced. We had teacher leaders these last 2 years, and they kind of set out to have these elevated conversations and be a little bit more like, hey guys, let's not talk about that, or you know what, let's look at it differently. And I think that was a lot of the feedback they received was like, oh, you think you're so much better than us now.
Well, it's hard. The MCL, if we're talking about the MCL roles or
department any type of leadership role,
it's hard though, because it's hard to transition into a leadership role where you are a teacher and a peer. So when I applied for an assistant principal role, I was interviewed at the current campus I was teaching at. However, I chose to leave because I knew that I would not get the respect, and my career would have been so different had I stayed there.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So for teacher leaders, I don't ever encourage them to have like conversations on evaluation, just pretty much on, hey, let's look at content together.
So. Not so much really kind of doing, but I think even like just in a social setting,
yes,
if you're out at a restaurant or something.
But then I would ask you, like, so if you were telling me, like, if you and I were having this conversation, some of the teachers were giving you grief about that, then I would ask you, I'm like, well, why would you surround yourself around them?
Yeah,
like, think about that. Like, if you value that friendship, then you need to let them know you're hurting my feelings, and just be honest. Like, I don't appreciate it, But if you don't really value it, why are you surrounding yourself around them?
That's a great thought. I think that is true. How would you say for someone who maybe went down that road, who is a bit negative, they do see everything on campus, they've kind of learned from themselves, like, hey, you know what, I'm always negative. I always look. How do they make that change? How do they?
It's easy. It's a mindset. And you wake up one day and you say, I'm not doing it. And then it gets easier every day. But you truly, I'm a firm believer, people treat you and talk to you the way you allow them to treat you and talk to you. And that's why I choose to always be respectful. But I'm not going to tolerate, negativity or people who are not here for the right reasons. But when I say it's easy, it starts with your mindset.
Yes.
And then you grow from there, right? But you just got to ask yourself, what am I willing to tolerate? What can I not?
Well, my last question would be, this is kind of different, but for new teachers who are coming on campus, a brand new teacher, first year, and all the nerves and not knowing any of the staff members, not knowing you, or what is your advice for a new teacher? What is the big things they can do to set themselves up to be successful?
Ask questions. I see with new teachers too often that they are fearful to ask questions because they don't want to be seen as they don't know what they're doing. But no, find the right people. Ask questions, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. It's going to be a tough year. Put your helmet on because it's going to be rough. The road's going to be rough. But I need them to know to go in it. I'm here to support you. And when you fail or when you fall down, guess what? I'm going to help pick you back up, and we're going to keep going. But year one is tough.
Yes. And
it's okay to not know everything.
That's a great thing. I think that my first year, I did hide everything because I felt like that. Anytime I would say something, they were like,
God, how
do you not know?
I did too, because you didn't want to be seen as a weak teacher, or you weren't prepared, but I would have done so many things different.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, yeah. That's a great thought. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
No problem. This was fun.
Okay, good. Well, maybe we can do a different topic next time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation Talking to Teachers is a podcast centered around the education industry and all the professionals that work together to make an impact in students' lives daily. A special thanks to both my guests today and our sound engineer, Robert Garcia. Please tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time to hear a new episode. Follow us on Instagram at Talking to Teachers. For any inquiries or if you'd like to be interviewed, email us at talkingtoteacherspodcast@gmail.com, provided you work in the education industry from service to public to private sector. I'm your host, Marcus Ruby. Have a wonderful day, and from all of us here at Talking to Teachers, thank you for what you do for students every day.